In this video, I'm going to build and deploy a software as a service application from start to finish. And I haven't actually done anything on this application yet. So you're going to see me do absolutely everything to get this into production and be able to take payments for the service. So I'm going to be using my starter pack called IndieFlow, and you can purchase this for $9. I might increase the price later, but right now it's $9. So it should be pretty affordable for most people. So let's just dive straight into it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clone the repository, and I'm going to call this pic of web. So basically my idea is that you can take a picture of a website with an API, and so you can use that for open graph images or whatever you want really. So let's cd into pic of web, and I'm just going to run pnpmi. So while that's installing, I'm going to go purchase the domain. So I'm going to use Cloudflare for that, and I'm going to get picofweb.com. Okay, let's purchase that. Okay, cool. We've got the domain name. Now let's go create a new repository so we can deploy this straight away. So I'm going to come over to GitHub, create a new repository, and I'm going to call this pic of web, and I'm going to make this private. So we can follow these instructions to initialize the repository and send it up to GitHub. So let's go back over to a terminal, and I'm just going to open this up in Cursor. I'm going to be using AI a fair bit in this because I want to get this SaaS deployed as quickly as possible. So now that I'm in the repository, the first thing I want to do is remove the current Git directory. Then I can do git init to initialize it, git add everything, create our first commit, and then we can set the branch to main. And then finally, we can set the origin to our new repository, and then we can push. And if we refresh this repository, we should see our code in here. Okay, so the next thing to do is to have a look at this example environment. So we need to set up a better auth secret. I'm not going to be using Google Auth, so I can remove all of that. I am going to be using Stripe. I am going to be using Resend. I'm not going to be using S3, and I am going to upload files, but I'm going to upload them to Cloudflare R2. So I'm going to uncomment that. And I'm going to be using the server base URL, and I'm going to be using Railway to deploy this application. So I'm going to keep these environment variables here. And then I might set up Sentry later, but you don't need to see that. That is boring. Okay, cool. So let's go create this better auth secret. If we come over to the better auth documentation, then on here, we can generate a secret, and then we can paste. Actually, let's copy our .env.example to .env. And now we can paste our better auth secret in here. So I'm going to use a different secret for local development and a different one for production, but I can paste this in here, and then I can use this as a template for when we go to deploy. Okay, I didn't save that before I copied, but that is okay. All right, so I think we're good here. Let's go over to Railway, and I'm going to create a new deployment, and I'm going to deploy from a GitHub repo, and I'm going to deploy from the pic of web. Now this deployment is going to fail because we haven't set up our environment variables, but that's okay. We can get the deployment going, and then we can configure the environment variables as we create them. So if we come into variables and we just click the raw editor, then we can come in here and we can paste this in. And I'm just going to remove all the ones that I don't have set and the comments. And I'm going to set the from email address here to Tom. And then this is going to send from tom@picofweb.com. And I want to create a new better auth secret for this. Let's generate a new one. and our database URL. So I'm going to use Neon. You can create, I think, 5 projects for free. They have a very generous free tier, and we can use their branching to have our development and production in the same project. So go over to new project and choose pick of web as the name. And I'm going to deploy to AWS. And the reason I'm going to deploy to AWS is because we have a Sydney one here, and this is closest to me. So it's just going to be a little bit faster for me. So we'll leave the database name as Neon, and let's create that. Now, if we go over to branches, you can see we have a production branch here. That's good. Let's also create a development branch. We're going to call this local. And the parent is going to be production. At the current point in time, we don't have any data in there, so that's okay. Now we get a connection string here for our development branch. Let's copy that. And I'm going to come over to my local.env, and I'm going to paste that in. Let's close that. And then if we go back over to branches, we go over to our production one and click connect. Now we get a new connection string here. We can copy that. And if we come over to railway, we can paste that in. Okay, so let's set up Stripe. The Stripe is going to be a little bit tedious because you need to fill in a bunch of data to get your production account. So I'm just going to use the test account for now. And then if we have time later, then I can add the production account, but it's a little bit boring. Basically, you just have to fill in details about where the money's going and stuff. And it's not too difficult. Anyone can do this. So I'm going to click up here and I'm going to click create account. And I'm going to call this pick of web. And the country of operation is going to be Australia because that's where I'm located. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's where your users have to be located. And I just made a design choice. Pick of web is just all going to be lowercase. So let's create this. So even in production for now, we're just going to be using our test Stripe details. So we won't be able to take any payments. You need to create a proper Stripe account that isn't in developer mode to do that. And I'm going to be taking non-recurring payments. So this is not going to be a subscription SaaS. You're going to buy credits and then you can use those credits. And once you're finished, you need to buy more credits to keep using the service. So let's go to dashboard. So you can see here, we're in a sandbox. So that's good. You can switch to live mode here, but you won't be able to do anything until you fill in all of those details. So let's go over to developers and we can go over to API keys. Now we have this publishable key here. Let's copy that. And you can see here, we have this Vite Stripe publishable key. We'll paste that in there. Now we have our secret key. Now we also need a webhook secret. So let's go over to webhooks, create a new event. Now I'm just going to set this up to localhost port 3000 for now, /API. And there should be a URL in here that I need to set this to, but I'm not sure what that is. And I should add this to the end example, but if I come over to auth server, I need to go over to better auth to find out what the webhook URL should be, because I haven't documented that here, and that's not good. I should do that. So Stripe, and we can see webhook, set up Stripe webhook, and you can see here they give it to you. So go back over to Stripe, paste that in. I'm just going to replace actually your domain with pickofweb.com because that's what it will be in production. We can change this to something using nrock or Cloudflare tunnels later on. Okay, so select the events that you want to use. And I think I just want checkout session complete. That's the only event that I should need. Let's add the endpoint. Now we get this signing secret. Let's copy that. And we can paste that in here. Let's also copy those. And I'm going to put that into my local environment because these are actually test credentials. Now, resend. I need a resend API key. So I'm going to come over to resend.com and click on API keys, create a new key. This is going to be called pick of web prod. Actually, let's go add the domain first. So come over to domains, click add. This is going to be pickofweb.com. Probably North Virginia. Okay, this is cool. I can sign into Cloudflare and hopefully this sets it up for me. I can authorize that. Okay, cool. That looks like it's going to be set up. Now let's add an API key. This is going to be called pick of web prod. Maybe my domain has to be authorized first. And this is pending. So let's wait for this to be correct before we continue with that. So while we wait for that, we can set up our Cloudflare stuff. So the Cloudflare storage is S3 compatible storage. So we can use here our S3 access keys and it's going to use Cloudflare out of the box for us. So if we come over to Cloudflare and go over to R2, then we can create a bucket and I'm just going to call this pick of web. You can make a different bucket for local and production if you want to. I'm just going to create one for now. By the way, if you have purchased IndieFlow and you come over to the README, it will have everything in here from how to set up things like R2. It has instructions on how to set everything up. And if it doesn't, then create an issue and I'll fix it. So in settings here, we need to add a CORS policy. Now, it looks like they've changed the interface here, but here we have the CORS policy. We can copy that and I can just change the domain here to pick of web and localhost port 3000. So this is going to work locally and in production. We can save that. And we also need to add a domain to this. So let's go to custom domains and we can add one. So I can connect my pick of web domain. Wait, I think I want to remove that. I want to set this up as a subdomain of pickofweb.com. Okay, yeah, I want to set the CNAME up as media. So if my main domain doesn't work, I need to go back and fix that. Okay, so now resend is all verified. Let's go over to API keys and hopefully we can make this. I don't know why this is not letting me add a domain. Okay, maybe we don't need to add a domain. Pick of web prod. Let's just add this. Okay, I'm going to copy that and I'm going to come over to Railway and I'm going to paste that in. And so that's resend done. Now we need to get our S3 access key. So I always forget where to get this stuff. It tells us here in the README where to get this. Go to the R2 section, create a bucket if you haven't. Generate an API token with appropriate permissions, R2 admin. Give you API key and secret. Okay, so I need to generate a token for this bucket. But they've changed the interface here. So, okay. So the way to get that is to go to R2, you go to the main overview screen, you go to API, manage API tokens. Now I can create an API token. So this is going to be called pick of web prod. I'm going to give this admin access. Okay, so now I have my access key ID, my secret access key. The region is going to be auto S3 endpoint. So I think that's this. The bucket name is just pick of web. And the public URL is going to be media.pickofweb.com. Okay, I'm going to copy that and copy it back into my local as well. So we can use those same credentials. Okay, so I think we have everything. Now we can save that and we can do a redeployment. And it failed. So not too worried about that. Let's go add a custom domain. I'm going to call this pick of web. And I'm going to set the port to 3000, pickofweb.com. Now I need to set up my CNAME for @ and to this railway value here. So let's go over to domains, manage domains, pick of web. And update DNS configuration. I want to add a domain. I want to set up a CNAME @ and then I can paste in that value. I want to turn proxy off and then save that. Okay, let's dismiss that and we can go over and see why this build failed. Oh, it didn't. It was the other build that failed. This one's still going. So once it's built the image, it's going to then deploy it and you can have a look at the deploy logs. And then once it's deployed, you're going to get some HTTP logs as well. So one other thing to note is down here in the networking, I've put my real domain in here, but you can also generate a domain. So you can have a staging server if you want, and you could set up a railway domain for that, or you could use a subdomain like staging.pickofweb.com. But I'm not going to bother doing that right now. Okay, so once this is built, I think I expect everything to be good. I should be able to access it on that domain. Okay, so let's run pnpm dev. And I can open this in my browser. Oh, okay, so if we go over to env.server.ts, you can see here we're getting an error, and this is a Zod error saying that we have GitHub client ID as required, but I don't want that to be required because I'm not going to use that. So I'm just going to change that to optional, and I'm going to change that to optional as well. Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, cool. It looks like we're all good. Let's go over to login. And you can see here we have sign in with GitHub. I don't want to enable that. I just want to have email password for now. So I'm going to come over to auth. Actually, I'm just going to look for sign in with. And in here, we should have a list of enabled providers. So I'm just going to comment that out and refresh. And then I'm just going to comment out this or continue with email as well. Shouldn't actually say that if you have no providers, but that is something that we can fix up. Okay, cool. Let's try this out. Actually, before we do that, let's go over to constants in our client, and we can just change this to pick of web. And we can say, take screenshots of websites. Okay, cool. So you can see that that has changed a bunch of things here just by changing that constant. Sign into pick of web. It's changed it down here. Hasn't changed the logo, and that is because it's a logo. And let's also go over to root. And I want to get rid of this demo banner up here as well. So I'm just going to remove that. And then that's going to cause an error. Okay, cool. That's looking a bit better. We just have a little bit of space here at the top from the demo banner. So let's remove that there. Okay, cool. This is looking good. So I don't want to have subscriptions in here. I only want to have credits or a single purchase. So the first thing that I'm going to do is fix the code for that. So let's go over to auth.server. And you can see in here, we're using the Stripe plugin and we have subscriptions enabled. I'm just going to remove that. And we can have all of this here, but I also want to listen to case checkout session complete. And we have this Stripe service. So in here, let's just create a new function, export async function checkout session, create checkout session. No, async function handle checkout session complete. Okay, cool. So let's just for now console.log the event. And we can go over to here and we can say wait handle checkout session complete. Cool. So the next thing that I want to do is I need to update my schema, and that's going to be in index. You can see here that we have this auth schema that's generated by Better Auth. So I don't want to touch that. What I want to do instead, so I want to set credits on a user, but I don't want to update my user table. And so I'm going to create a new table here to handle the user credit amount. So I'm going to export const user credits. Okay, so user ID is going to be text, and I'm going to say references user, yes, .id. And we can just spread our timestamps on here. Okay, so I think this is good. This generate default as identity is just going to, it's like an auto increment integer. Okay, cool. We have a user credits table. Let's go ahead and run pnpm. Actually, let's have a look at the package JSON. And we have this db push command here. So this should push our schema up to Neon for us. Okay, yes, I want to do that. One change applied. Let's go have a look at Neon. And we'll have a look at our tables. And which branch am I in? I'm gonna go over to local. Tables. Okay, cool. So this is prefixed with IndieFlow user credits. I actually want to change that prefix here. So you can see here that we're prefixing our tables when we create them. So we can see like what our custom tables are. And that is prefixed with IndieFlow. So let's just prefix that with POW. And I'm not going to add an underscore there because we do that in that function. Let's see what this does. pnpm db push. And it's asking us if we want to rename the table. Yes, we do. Cool. Let's look at that. Awesome. So we have this POW is a prefix of user credits. Let's go over to Railway, and we can see that our build failed here. And just a reminder, this is the first time I'm building this. So I don't know why this has failed. I mean, it's telling me exactly why it's failed here, but this is not something that I've pre-planned. Okay, cool. This is the same error that we had locally. So let's just go push those changes. So fix and schema. And we can push that up. And you can see here in Railway that it's already building from that commit. It just seems weirdly fast, but anyway, that is what it's doing. One thing that I'll show you while that is building is we have this railway.json, and in here, this is like config for your Docker file that it's going to create. Or it's not really config for the Docker file, it's config for Railway, but it's just as code instead of you having to go in and type all of this stuff. So we have this pre-deploy commit, and this is going to run pm drizzle kit push. So this is going to push to our production database, and it's going to update the schema for us, and it's going to force push it. So it's not going to ask us, do you want to make these changes? So that change that we made down here where we did db push, it's going to do that in production for us. So your production database is always going to be up to date before it deploys there. Then we have our start command, and then we have an health check endpoint. So it's going to hit this endpoint in your container. So it's going to send this request to your container. Your container has to respond within 60 seconds with a 200. Otherwise, it won't actually deploy that instance because there's something wrong. We can't start the application inside of the container. So this is a really nice, helpful feature to make sure that you're not going to ship something that is just completely broken. Okay, we got another error here, and this is me being silly. So I deleted this interested table, and it's being required somewhere else. I probably should have thought about that before I deleted it. So let's just go back to our schema, and it's the index file. And I'm just going to go back to my commit history, and I'm just going to see what it was so I can just copy and paste it. So schema index, and this is the table here that we removed. So let's just copy that. Not we, I did this all on my own. Okay, I'm taking full responsibility for that one. And then we can add this back and make sure we prefix this properly and push that back up. I don't know what is with the terminal on WSL, but it's not taking in letters when I type them. Okay, so you can see that it's finished building successfully. So it's going to deploy now. So we just need to hope that the deploy step works all fine. Otherwise, there's another problem and we need to go fix that. Okay, let's have a look at these deploy logs. So you can see that it did run the db push. So it's saying here, these are the tables that it's about to create. And then if we scroll down, then you can see changes applied, and it did actually deploy that. So this is complete, and we got no errors. So let's go see if it did deploy. So we're getting some HTTP logs coming in here, and we have a 502, which is not good. Let's go over to our logs. Oh, okay. So this is my error again. You can see here it's listening on port 8080. If we go into the settings, architecture, if we go close that, and then you can see down here, I told it to listen on port 3000. So let's update that. And then hopefully we don't need a new deployment. Hopefully this just works. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Awesome. So this looks like it's working as expected. So we've successfully deployed the application. now let's go try sign up and see if this works. So I'm going to put in my email address here, my password, and yeah, I'm just going to have one password, generate one. Okay, so this seems to have worked. Now I'm just checking my emails and I did get the email. So let's click on the link. This is just to verify the account. Okay, that looked good. Let's go have a look in the database to see. Need to have a look at production, have a look at tables and user, and you can see that we're here and email verified is true. So let's go try sign in. And we got sign in successful, but it didn't work. Okay, so if we have a look in the railway logs, you can see here that we're getting some errors. So that's why it's saying that we're not signed in. So we have this list active subscription. And the reason this is not working is because we have disabled subscriptions in BetterAuth, but we're still trying to use this API here to get the subscription. So I'm just going to remove this because we're not going to need this at all. And then remove all of that. Basically what this is trying to do is it's trying to get the subscription server side so we can render different things if the user has an active subscription. So for example, if they had an active subscription, you would want to show them prompts to be able to use your service. So that's why that is there. But we just need to go through and remove all of this. If anybody else wants to do this, not make a subscription service, then, and this is annoying, then I can make a patch. So you can just apply the patch if you want. And then it will just remove all of this stuff for you. So let me know if you do want that. So this is looking fine. We can remove user from there. We don't use it at all. Let's just run npm run build. Okay, so it looks like it is going to build successfully. So let's go push this change. Fix list active subs. And we can push that up. Okay, so let's just assume that's going to work. It will. It'll be fine. So if we come back to Stripe, I want to make my product. So if we come over to product catalog and we add a product, actually, before we do this, let's see if we can get nrock running. So I'm going to write ngrock http 3000, and I don't have nrock installed. So let's install that. And then what nrock is going to do is it's just going to tunnel a public facing HTTPS address to your local application. So let's try that again. So I need to sign up. It's very annoying. You used to be able to just use it from the command line. Let's try. Your auth token. Let's copy that. And I'm just going to do this over to the side because I don't want to have to change this one. Okay, cool. So now we have this address here. And because I'm using the free one, every time I stop this application and start it, it's going to give me a different address, which is kind of annoying because we need to set this in our server.allowed host. One thing you can do if you don't like that and you want a real address like local.pickofweb.com is you can use what's called Cloudflare tunnels. So The reason I'm not going to do it now is just because it's a little bit of a hassle to set up, but it works really well and you can use your own domain. So let's just add this to our app.config. And you can see here we have our allowed hosts. So you can see this one here is a Cloudflare tunnel that I did have set up. Let's go see if this works now. Okay, I think we need to stop the server, npm dev, and we'll start it up again. And I actually need to remove HTTPS. And it looks like you don't need to stop the server and start it again because I just removed the HTTPS and it worked. And I have a rogue S here, which that's going to be quite fun to find. I guess is it coming from the nav bar though? Okay, we can live with that rogue S. Let's put this inside of our webhook before we create the product. We'll come back over to developers. We'll come back over to webhooks. We're going to go into this webhook and we're going to update the details. I'm going to change the domain name here with the HTTPS. Now I'm going to come over to my product catalog. I'm going to add a product and I'm just going to call this pick of web credits. And I said this is going to be all lowercase, didn't I? Pick up. Okay, let's make that some credits. And I want to change this to USD. And I'm just going to say that this is $10. And this is a one-off payment. Let's add that product. Now that's going to create a product with pricing. And on this price, I want to edit the metadata and I want to say that this is credits and I'm going to set this to 10,000. Now I can use that metadata for when the webhook comes in. I can look at that product and I can say, okay, they purchased this product at this price. This is how many credits that they should get. And the reason that I like to do that instead of hard coding it is I can control it all in Stripe and I don't need to do a new deployment if I want to say, make this plan give you 15,000 credits instead. Okay, we got a new deployment here. And if we come over, I refreshed it and we're logged in. And we've also got our rogue S, which is pretty important to our success. So this is good. We're deployed, we're up and we're going and we're logged in. We've got authentication going. And so I think that that deserves a swig of this peach monster, which is better than white monster, by the way. Anyone who thinks white monster is better is just having a taste. Okay, so we've logged something down here. That is probably from when we got that error. That's fine. So we get our product here. Let's go over to our local version and we can go over to pricing. And we have no products here. The other issue is, and this is quite a complicated one, it's that we're on the production URL, not a localhost URL. Idiot. Okay, now we're logging our plans. This error down here, this public domain, let's go have a look at our env. The reason is because we have a server URL set to that, but that's production configuration. So let's remove that and restart our server, and then everything should work much nicer. Okay, now we have our plans. It says sign in to subscribe. So let's sign in to purchase. Yep. And that's fine. I might add I might add more info later. I might add more prices later. So this is just a basic plan. So right now it's taking up the full screen, but I'm going to add different plans and you get a different amount of credit and you get a discount or whatever. So let's also remove the save. Sorry, I want to remove this save 10% thing. So that's this whole section here. Okay, so we need to create an account for here as well. So we need to create an account for local as well. So let's do that. And it hasn't sent me the email, but that's okay. We have database access. So let's just go over to our branches, go over to development, tables, user, email verified. Let's set that to true. Sign in. Cool. Now let's go back over to pricing, click purchase. So this is loading forever. And I'm not sure why. Let's have a look at the network, see what's happening. Oh, okay. So if we have a look at our pricing table, we're trying to create a subscription using BetterAuth. We can't do that because we're not using subscriptions. What we need to do is we need to create a checkout session. You can see here we're using all client subscription upgrade. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is to create a checkout session. So let's go into our auth. So let's go into our stripe.service and I can export an async function, create checkout session. Okay, yes. For that DB user. Okay, this is going to create a customer, but really what we want to do is we just want to ensure the customer exists with that email. So I'm going to say create customer. I just want to say const existing customer. I want to list them. If they're not there, then I want to create them. Okay, this should work. This will be fun. Okay, so the Stripe customer is wait, create customer. And this is going to return their ID. The Stripe customer ID, the plan ID. This is not the plan ID. This is the product ID. Oh, sorry, it's the price ID. Okay, cool. Now we need to wire this up using TRPC. So we can come into our Stripe router and in here, I can say create checkout session. Yep. And I require the user to be logged in. So this is a protected procedure. Cool. And I want the schema to be an object with the URL. No, it needs to be the price ID. I don't know what URL is there. Oh, this is the output. I want this to be the input. So this is just a validation schema for the input. Okay, cool. Now let's go over to our pricing table. And I want to change this mutation here So return trpc dot stripe dot create checkout session dot mutation options. Let's change this to price ID. Okay, so this is not liking that I'm conditionally calling that, but so we don't need to do any of this. Let's do that. And now we can create a function, handle subscription update. And let's make this an async function. And we're going to await that. Okay. So now we've changed that stuff. There's some cleanup to do, but that's fine. Let's give this a try. Required parameter success URL. Okay, that makes sense. In Stripe service, when we create the session, we need to set the success URL. And we just want to set this success URL to a thank you page. So let's try that. You must provide mode when using price. Okay, the mode of payment. Okay, it looks like we created the URL. We just didn't redirect to it. So let's go do that. And let's just do that in here. Okay, let's use effect. There's probably a better way to do this. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, so let's try that. Use effect is not imported. That is true. Okay, cool. So this is a sandbox account. So when we make this purchase, it's not actually going to do anything. So let's try pay with link. Okay, so we can get Stripe test card details. We can copy the first credit card detail here. Paste that in. Then the expiry just needs to be any time in the future. CSV can be anything. The name on the card is just going to be anything. We're processing. So let's have a look at the webhooks, and we should see a checkout session complete webhook come in. Okay, cool. And this failed. That is fine. Failed to connect to remote host. Let's just see if we're still... Oh, I think the URL is wrong here. This is probably .app. Let's try to resend that. The Stripe UI makes you think that it's real time, but it's not. You have to refresh, or at least that's my experience. Okay, now we have a 200. We got our success true, and we should see in the console that it listed it. Cool. This is good. This is what we want. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to fetch the product, and then with the product, we can use the credits metadata to figure out how many credits we should credit their account. So let's go over to, so just here where we're logging the event, we also need to get the customer. Okay, so let's first log the customer ID is equal to have a look here. This data here is a little bit easier to see. Let's copy that. And we can open that in a new tab. I'm going to split my window here, close that. Now we need the customer ID, which is going to be in object and then customer. Okay, I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Stripe dot. So the issue here with the typing is that we just have Stripe event where this should be Stripe dot checkout session complete event. Okay. So how can we retrieve this customer? So the customer ID. Yeah, let's cast this as a string. We know that's going to be a string. Okay, now let's rename this to Stripe customer. And const email is equal to Stripe customer.email. Object dot. Actually, let's just log console.log. Okay, so I think what we need to do is we need to see if this is a deleted customer. You can see here that customer is a union of Stripe customer or Stripe deleted customer. So we need to say const is deleted. And if it is deleted, then we just need to return. Otherwise, we're going to get the email from the customer, and EQ should come from. Why is EQ not coming from result? It is. What's wrong with this? Okay, so let's say const Stripe customer email. And then we can say, if not Stripe customer email, then we're going to return. We probably should log this, but whatever. The Stripe subscription, no, we want to upsert into the customer credits. So let's say upsert customer credits, and we want to increment their number by the amount on the product. So to do that, we need to get the product. So we need to get the price. How do we know what they actually bought here? Oh, you know what we should do? When we create the checkout session, we should add the metadata to the checkout session. So then we can just grab it straight off this object here. Let's try that and see if that works. So session, let's add meta data user ID. This would be good as well. We can use the meta ID. So let's say const prices dot retrieve by the price ID. And then we should have credits on here. So let's say const metadata is the price metadata. And let's put that in there. Let's just log this, console.log credits, and make sure that we are doing that. Do we have a real error here? I think we may have a real one. Yeah, I think it was just a syntax error. Okay, credits, 10,000. We got it. So this, we're adding it to the metadata here. Let's go complete another purchase. Okay, my webcam cut out then, but we're back. So we're going to complete another purchase. Okay, and we have in the metadata here the credits and the user ID. Okay, let's just use those two things and we can just assume that they're always going to be there. We don't have to do any of this crap up here. This Stripe customer email, all that sort of stuff. You can just get the meta. So metadata, user ID. We'll check the metadata. Turn. We'll check the user ID. Return the DB user. We don't even need to get the DB user. Oh yeah, let's do that. Just to make sure the user does actually exist. Okay, so let's say await db dot insert user credits. Values. Yeah, so we're doing an on conflict do update, and we're looking for a conflict on the user ID. So if the user ID already exists, then we have a conflict and we just want to update. Otherwise, we're going to insert and we're going to set the credits equal to their existing credits plus our new credits. So let's just have a look at this user credits table, and I just want to make sure it references the user ID, but I just want it to be unique as well. So let's run npm db push. So each user can only have one of these credit objects. Okay, let's replay this event here. And we'll go have a look at our database. Okay, we have no rows in there, so that didn't work. So let's just have a look at the Stripe service. Maybe we just didn't save that. Let's try to replay this event again. And this should work. It should be pretty fast. Okay, so now we have 10,000 credits for that user. Let's replay it again. Okay, let's change this to 500. And resend this event. And it should be 10,500. So we're incrementing from the initial value. If you want to stop this replay event here, so you don't want to increment every time you replay that event, then you can log it. You can log the ID of the event and say that we've already processed that event. And once I go to production, I'm probably gonna do that. I don't want this issue to. I don't want to be able to resend this webhook and it credit the user every time. That is a little bit of a security issue. Okay, so now we have our credits, we've deployed and everything. Let's go implement our feature that people are actually going to pay for. And that's an API where they can take a screenshot of a website. So the way that I want this to work is you send an API request and then it sends back a URL for you. So we need to use API keys for that. And luckily, BetterAuth has a plugin for API keys. So let's go use that plugin. So I'm going to come over to auth.server. Let's remove GitHub from there. We don't need that. And we can import the API key plugin. Now, I'm in auth.server, and you'll need to also import the client-side plugin, but the documentation tells you how to do that. So go to plugins, API key enabled. No, we don't need that. Okay, now we also need to migrate. This is going to create the schema for us. So let's put that into our command line. So the command you need here is generate. So I'm going to copy generate. And it's going to ask us if we want to put this in auth schema. I'm not sure why it's asking that. I want to put this in this server schema auth.schema.ts. So I'm not sure why it's doing that, because okay, let's just say yes, and then we can copy it over. Annoying that it wants to generate theirs. Like, it's such a weird path as well. There is probably some config for it that I just haven't come across. Okay, let's copy that schema, paste that into our auth schema. And you can see here it's created our API key table for us. So let's do pnpm db push. And that's going to create that table for us. Awesome. Now we also have the auth client. So we need to enable this plugin in auth.client. So this is auth.client is what you use on the UI. So in plugins, I'm going to put our API keys. Okay. Now let's go create a new page for API keys. So in routes, and I think I'm just actually going to dump it in console because whatever. I'll fix this up later and I'll make a nice page for it and stuff, but you don't need to see this. So const data mutate async is use mutation. And then I think we can just copy this. And then our mutation function can just be what we copied from there. And then we can import our auth client. So this is going to return an error. So we can say if we got an error, then throw a new error. Otherwise, just return the API key. And we don't want this to expire, so let's remove that. And do we want metadata? No. And we want the prefix to just be POW. And my API key is fine. Let's add a button on click, create the API key. Awesome. Now, I think we can list the API keys. Yep. So let's create a query for that. The const data is use query. And the query function is going to be this list function here. And then that is just going to throw again and return the keys. So now down here, we can JSON.stringify the API keys. Go over to our dashboard. Go to our console, which is where I think I put it. So we have an empty array here. Let's create an API key. Now we have our API key. Let's, on success here, invalidate the query for API key. So up here, I think I need to create my query client. I think that should work. Let's try that. Yeah, it does. Cool. So when we create the API key, it only shows it once it's created. See, we have this one here. and then we can create a new API key, and it's going to create a new API key, but that doesn't actually exist anywhere here. You have to copy it, and then it's not going to show you again. So it's a nice security feature, but you do have to show it here. Okay, so this is our query key section done. Let's go over to our modules. So I know Stripe is a module. Let's create a new module, and I'm going to call this screen shots. Actually, let's just call it screenshot. Cool. Inside of screenshot, if we have a look inside of media and email and Stripe and user, you can see that we have all of the same files. So we need a screenshot.router.ts. We need a screenshot.service.ts and a screenshot.schema.ts. The reason I like to add the name here, like screenshot router, is because it makes it easy to find when you search for it. So if you search for screenshot, you can see now these files all appear here. If you just called it schema, you would just have a million files called schema, and it would just be more difficult to find. So, okay, let's use cursor here. So take a screenshot of a given URL with Playwright. So I want to input a URL, and you can also input some settings like dimensions, a selector if you want it dark or light mode. And then, yeah, you'll be able to take the screenshot, and then it's going to upload it, and it's going to return the URL. One fancy thing that you could do with this is, instead of returning once we have the URL, is just create a row in the database and then return the ID, and then they can head that object and find the status of the upload. But I can't be bothered doing that. So, okay, this is done way more than I thought it would. Holy moly. No, don't use a class. Come on. Okay, do not use a class, just I mean, it's doing all of it. Maybe I can forgive the class because it's actually done way more than I expected it to. It's give me a health check service and everything. Example. Okay, why that does that, one thing that I forgot is when we create the API key, so let's go back to the console page. When we create this API key, we do actually want some metadata. We want the user's ID on there, so we can take credits from their account. So let's say user ID and const. We have a use user? No, we don't. Where are we using this? We have the user here. Okay, let's just inject the user into here. We can do that by getting the route dot use loader data. And we say loader context return user. We can get the user. Actually, let's just do that in here. That's much simpler. I'm just going to remove that from here. And now we can use our user.id in here. So to use the metadata, we have to enable it apparently. So we need to go to auth.server and we need to say enable metadata, and that true. Okay, cool. Now we have meta. And we have the user ID. Awesome. Let's go over to the API keys. And I just want to delete all of these. Now let's create a new one. Okay, cool. Let's have a look at what Claude has come up with for this screenshot stuff. It's done documentation and everything. Okay, let's just accept it and we can try it out. All right, I also want to upload this, and we have this media service here. And this is we can use this to generate pre-signed upload. So let's modify this to upload an actual file. So add media service, add a file upload function, and then upload it when a screenshot is taken. Okay, while that is doing that, I don't want this to be used through TRPC. I want this to be used through an API route. So in our routes, we have API. And here, I'm going to create a folder called screenshot. And then I'm going to have index.ts. And then I'm going to have a post. Okay, so I'm just going to hard code the URL. Const URL is equal to https google.com. Const data is going to be screenshot service dot take screenshot. Okay, let's just accept all of that. Let's add our API route. Sorry, screenshot / index. And let's also add our console page to the context. I wish I wouldn't do this documentation. No way I'm that thorough. Okay, so now update the console to with a form that takes an API key and a URL, then makes the request to the /API /screenshot. Actually, let's change this to screenshots. Make sure the API key is validated. Actually, let's do that ourselves because I don't know if it knows that we're using Better Auth to do that. Okay, so we have this validate. Okay, cool. All right, hopefully, maybe this is the last prompt and then we're good to go. We have a valid working SaaS application. So the next thing to do here would be to update Stripe. So I want to get out of sandbox mode and then create a webhook in the non-sandbox mode. Update my credentials, add a product, add the metadata to the product, and then that's it. That's all you would need to do. And then you can start charging customers, promoting your application. You would need to update the landing page and everything. I don't know what it's done here. It's for some reason returned the API key. I don't know why you would want to do that, but I also don't want to return success true. If it's 200, then it's successful. So let's try it out. Okay, cool. It's giving me a form here and everything. Let's take a screenshot of neon.com. Create a new API key. Okay, it's filled it in for us. We're going to error in the console and you might not be able to see it. So it's a playwright error. And it is because we need to initialize playwright. The playwright needs to install the browser and that sort of stuff. So we need to do that. So I've installed playwright and all of its dependencies. Let's try this again. Hopefully this works. Well, it's taken a while, so maybe it's doing some stuff. Screenshot captured successfully, uploaded true. Okay, we have a URL. So let's see if it did actually upload. The URL isn't working, but that's fine. That's probably something we can fix. Okay, the path here needs fixing. Download it. There it is. It worked perfectly. Okay, the path needs fixing for the screenshot. I'm not sure why this domain didn't work. I think it's sent back. Oh, .com.com. Okay, that's fine. That's an issue we can fix. I wonder why that is. If that is in our environment variables. Yes, it is. Okay, let's try that again. Um, and then I'm expecting this to work absolutely perfectly. Okay, let's stop the server and then gonna start again, take the screenshot. So the URL works perfectly. I'm not sure what this error is here, to be honest, but that's fine. It's all fixable. One last thing that I want to do on this, just because I think it would be quite cool, is I want it to give you the curl options in this settings page here. So give the user the curl request as they fill in the options for the screenshot. Also give them fetch options and see the two with tabs. So basically, you're going to have tabs, and you can say copy the curl request or copy the fetch request, just to make it easier to implement this into your application. I'm not sure. Oh, it's just like grokking this, not actually updating it. That's pretty cool. Okay, while it's doing that, let's go push this up. And let's just get AI to write a commit message for us while we're here. Cool. Push. Okay, cool. I think that's enough. You've seen the development, the deployment of a full SaaS application that can start taking payments. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave a thumbs up. And if you would like to go purchase IndyFlow, you can find that at indyflow.app. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.